This isn't the best Xbox news. Like, when you look at things and you look at how Microsoft is kind of handling things, it's quite obvious that they've given up on, like, the hardware. And I know a lot of people, like, will throw that in my face that they're making another console or whatever they're doing. We don't really know exactly what they're doing. There's lots of rumors, so I'm willing to kind of hold off on complete criticisms of that until we see what's up. Like, if they just come out with a PC with, like, PC stores, I think that means that they pretty much have given up on the hardware. But it's also interesting because you can never find an Xbox Series X, like, anywhere. We've seen numerous stories where Xbox has completely pulled out of numerous countries, how you can't really buy it, and when you try to even buy stuff online, it's sold out constantly. And, like, I'm not saying that there's a huge demand, but all the markings of that quite possibly Microsoft gave up on trying to sell their console at all this generation, or they had a surplus of them. And there's been various consoles that have done this at various points in history, right? Where so you have these factories putting together these consoles, right? And this happened with, like, the Dreamcast. It happened with the GameCube. They'll stop production on these consoles and wait to catch up on the production. So Dreamcast did that. They stopped production. They ended up never starting production again because they discontinued the Dreamcast. GameCube, they stopped production for a while as well to try and catch up. They did eventually start production back up again, but it was one of those situations where it was kind of too little too late, whatever the case may be. I believe, and many people also believe, that Microsoft is kind of doing the same thing, and that they've given up the idea of trying to sell Xboxes this generation. They raised the prices of them, even though Sony didn't, Nintendo didn't. It's just weird to me that a company like Microsoft would raise prices like that. They have the ability and the finances to give people really, really good deals on the platforms, but they refuse to do that. And in fact, it's almost unheard of to see a console raise their prices in year 5. Absolutely insane. But with that being said, hey, it happens. And because of that, Microsoft might miss out on, on selling a lot of consoles upcoming here. Now, they did get a bump with, like, the college football game because it was only available on consoles and it was only available on current gen stuff, so we saw a bump there. Same thing could happen with GTA 6, but Xbox is maybe a little bit too obsessed with cloud gaming and PC hybrids that it might miss out on the gold rush to actually sell consoles. Hardware definitely isn't Xbox's focus anymore, but with all of its extracurricular distractions, it could end up missing this easy opportunity to actually sell more consoles than usual. One thing that has dogged Xbox above all other things this generation, and that's flagging Series X and S hardware sales. Out of the gate, Xbox Series X and S sold pretty well, keeping pace with and even beating PS5 a couple of times in the United States during the Sakana sales announcements. Xbox even took the sales crown over the holiday season a couple of times to start this generation. The initial sprint didn't last long, however. The PS5 had notorious stock issues initially, but once those were rectified, Series X and S sales have been firmly on the back foot in sales. Furthermore, it has faced near non-stop quarterly declines for at least a few years. The last time Xbox reported hardware growth was in fiscal quarter 3, 2023, owing to boosted supplies and pandemic demand. Kind of crazy to think that it's been, that way. The best Xbox has ever sold in the history was in holiday 2021. Surprise, surprise, when Microsoft released like 4 or 5 first-party games back to back to end the year, including their biggest IPs, which are, Halo and Forza Horizon 5. And they released those, and surprise, hey, the game sold well and the Xbox sold well. And then when they announced in that February thing that, hey, they're going to be putting games on PlayStation, sales completely tanked. And so, we kind of have that to look at as well. Series X is in stock on Amazon as of this article, and the Xbox Series S is in stock. Series X is $598.99. Series S is $429.99. However, stocks at global retailers have generally been incredibly patchy, particularly in Europe and Asia, as Microsoft also increased the price of Xbox consoles, making the Xbox Series X $100 more expensive than the equivalent PS5. So it's probably no wonder that Series X and S has posted nonstop declines for over 2 years. But few things are kind of coming together. They could stymie the fall of it if Xbox is paying attention, but it doesn't really seem like they are. Developers, as I said in another video, are finally abandoning the Xbox One and the PS4. Over the past few weeks and even longer, more and more games have begun abandoning past-gen systems. Xbox One and PS4 consoles have been uncharacteristically sticky compared to last gen. The Xbox One and PS4 x86 architecture means that it has been easier to maintain updates between multiple versions of the same game. The rise of service games too has kept players satisfied on previous systems longer than would have been the case with Xbox 360 and PS3. If someone only uses the console to play games like Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, and so on, which have all been well maintained on previous generation systems, why would they upgrade? Well, increasingly they may have no choice. Major service games like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, Genshin Impact, Rust Hunt Showdowns, and others have recently announced that their PS4 and Xbox One versions will no longer be supported. PUBG will end support, which I did a video on as well this year. For example, Genshin Impact will also end support on PS4 this year. Upcoming titles and major franchises like Battlefield 6 have also abandoned past Gen 2, despite previous entries being supported. More and more publishers are keen to leave last gen behind and take advantage of the boosted power of the Series X and the PS5 and PS5 Pro. It might not shift vast amounts of people across until titles like Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft drop support, but the trend is pretty straightforward. But does Microsoft even have the stock or marketing to take advantage of the situation? Increasingly, you can take your content from platform to platform. If Epic Games did drop support on Xbox One version, there's nothing in place to stop players from moving from Xbox One to PS5 if there's no stock available corresponding with an Xbox Series X or S. Microsoft has done very little to make the Series X and S attractive in recent years. Price increases, non-existent marketing, and now self-imposed lack of exclusive games make the Series X and S a hard sell. Even the Series S is barely cheaper than a PS5 digital version while being invariably less powerful. As more publishers abandon the Xbox One and PS4, Microsoft runs the risk of losing more console players to PS5 without a decent strategy in place. GTA 6 is going to be a huge moment in gaming history, and there's no doubt about this. If you don't think this game is going to be massive, you need to wake up. Windows, PC, and platforms like Steam might be the biggest growth vectors for traditional gaming right now, but there's one upcoming game, a very big game, that PC isn't getting at initially. GTA 6 hysteria is already popping off. Rumors abound that GTA 6 could exceed $100 at retail. Some venture capitalist firms and analysts have some pretty lofty expectations for the game too, expecting it to somehow sell 85 million copies in its first 2 months, with predictions from the likes of Ampere expecting $1 billion in sales on day one. And of course, GTA 6 won't be available on PC, but will most likely arrive later, like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5 before it. But the FOMO will be extreme regardless, especially for millions of gamers who remain on PS4 and Xbox One. A lot of people will likely be picking up current-gen consoles for the first time, specifically for Grand Theft Auto 6. In previous years, you could have pointed to the Xbox Series S as the most affordable way to get GTA 6, but with price increases, it's not true anymore. For just a little bit extra, you can get a PS5 digital edition that will most likely offer a better visual and performance for the game anyway. It's unknown whether or not GTA 6 will have any kind of marketing tie-in, but it does look like Sony is going to have, some kind of marketing with it. Microsoft's gaming business has moved well on from pushing its ecosystem, but by the firm's own reporting, Game Pass, which is exclusive to Microsoft platforms, has become a cornerstone, and the majority of those users are on Xbox consoles. So is Xbox prepared for any of this? Microsoft has grown its ecosystem beyond console. They have Xbox ROG Ally on the horizon, which is a Windows PC. Microsoft has been strongly hinting that the next-gen first-party Xbox will also be more Windows PC-like than ever, supporting stuff like Steam and other PC stores, while also incorporating backwards compatibility with current Xbox console ecosystem. There's also some things that they might be offering OEMs and pre-built PCs, etc. There are a considerable number of possibilities that open up with Microsoft's AMD partnership. This is all in the future, though, and hardly guaranteed for the Xbox ecosystem to continue being a viable endpoint for developers. Microsoft needs to remember it still has the Xbox Series X and S on deck for at least a few more years, and stock levels have been incredibly inconsistent. So yeah, like I've been saying that all along. They could have multiple chances to sell more consoles, but they just don't seem to care. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Sound off in the comments below. Let me know. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.